Hey, noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. If there is one thing that really fascinates me the most, is the idea of being able to tap into the past, a time long gone, just to hear how people spoke. Now, given I wish we had access to recordings from the Middle Ages, an impossibility for obvious reasons, but we do have access to stuff that is still very old. For instance, I found this video that really blew my mind. It's titled Incredible Footage of a Woman Who Was Born in 1835 being interviewed in 1929. So, let's just pause for a moment before we click and we watch it and then we react. There is a 3 minutes and 59 seconds version, so I'm going to watch this one here. Former US Senator, I think her name is Rebecca Felton. What I'm interested in is trying to see from a linguistic perspective the way she speaks. How different is it going to be? She's an American. Is it going to sound transatlantic? Like, maybe even older than that. I'm just fascinated by it. This is someone who was born in the kind of early 1800s. 1835, not exactly early, but do you know what I mean? This could be one of your grandmas in 4 years. Like, imagine you have a grandma who's in their 90s. She was born in... oh, my gosh, this blows my mind. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Hello. No. All right. All right.
All right, now what you want me to do?
Yeah.
Hello, folks. How you feel? Good this morning? Hope you do. I'm trying to get up.
Hope you do. Wow, I love it. Oh my gosh, this is the authentic, this is the real deal, guys. It's not someone putting on a... This is the real deal. Born in 1835.
On my feet again. Feel pretty good. Thankful it's as well as it is. Oh, boys, I'm pleased to see you. I don't know where you come from, but I give you all the welcome I've got to offer you.
See how she almost sounds... There is a dignity to it, isn't there? Both in the way they speak, it's kind of gone. It's something that I find endearing, charming even. It almost gives you an idea of someone who is being televised for the first time. It looks a little theatrical from our perspective, but that's how people spoke. I mean, of course, she's an educated person, so I guess not everyone spoke like her, but still.
I want to tell you that I'm living on the same ground that I've lived on for 75 long years.
75 long years. Man. Oh my gosh, this is a centuries old already. But she's from the 1800s, so she was old. She probably sounded antiquated and old to the youth of the 1920s, which means we are really connecting to something that is almost 200 years old, if you really think about it.
When I come here as an 18-year-old bride. I went to Washington 50 years and a little more ago. I saw all the
50 years and a little more ago. Man, I'm going to start saying it like that. It sounds so old school, old-fashioned.
people around there and been with the presidents. And I learned a great many things up there that I didn't know before. I'll add a little more to it. I was one of the board of lady managers for the Chicago Exposition. And I served my full time in Chicago and learned a good many things over there. I was a delegate to the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. I was a delegate to St. Louis, a juror at St. Louis. I think for a North Georgia cracker of my size and age, I've had a pretty good education on that line.
Yeah.
That do all right?
That do all right? She was asking oh, that's good. Yeah, of course. I actually like that they left in these.
I was a 3-year-old girl when the Indians were moved from this country to Indian Territory. I have an indistinct recollection of seeing the red men as they went through the woods, for everything was woods nearly at that time. I have a distinct impression if a 3-year-old child can have it. Nevertheless, I've been here since that time, and I've seen the march of progress all the way. At that time, we had only stagecoaches, and we only had horses and buggies, and we had lots of footback travelers.
So yeah, that's another thing. She really went through the technological development in the mechanized sense, right? Horses and walk around. That was it when she was young. Because when she was 3, it was 1838. And then, of course, as she gathers more, she's 5, she's 8, she's 10. Even when she's 10, it's still 1845. So she's got all the recollection as the, oh yeah, this is fascinating. But let's focus on the pronunciation again.
Yes, sir. I remember all of that, and had intimate acquaintance with the people of that time. Now I've seen it come along all this way, and the airplane goes over my house going on its way, and it's got to be such a common thing, the old girl don't go even out to see if she can look at it. Although at my advanced age I had a most serious accident that threatened my life very seriously, I feel like I'm on the way to recovery. I feel as much interest in people and things as I ever did.
Good for you.
And to tell me that you can't keep a good man down, I don't believe I'm debarred by sex. I believe I've got a chance yet.
You know what's interesting is that we still understand her. Of course, again, she sounds very, very, very old, but we can still understand. It would be an interesting study to see how far back can we go until we stop understanding, or when the percentages actually start changing significantly. Up to this point, I understand everything.
You dear boys, I want you to understand that I don't always talk this like flim-flam sort of talk. Way back yonder when I was a girl,
I take that back. I don't know what she just said.
always talk this like flim-flam sort of talk.
Flim flam? Yeah, I missed that one.
Way back yonder when I was a girl of about 16, I joined the church, and I think my Heavenly Father has led me along, and I want to give him praise and his thanks. And
Amen.
now, in 6 years of 100, I can say that I think that's the best part that contains my whole life.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, this was fascinating. This was fascinating. Let me see if we can find another one. All right, so she was lovely. Let me see. Our grandfather fought in the American Revolutionary War. Goodness gracious. Let's talk. Let's see. Woman born in 1878, so already a little further, talks about her childhood in Los Angeles, California, in the 1880s. So basically, that's like kind of me. Well, I not exactly, but I do remember a little bit of the 80s, of course. And so, yeah, if someone asked me in 30 years, if someone interviews me and says, "Hey, could you tell us about your childhood in the 1980s?" It would be the same, but with a century of distance. Let's see.
Hello, friends. In the following recording, you'll hear a woman born in 1878 tell you about her experiences growing up in Los Angeles during the 1880s. Her name was Bella Buford Tom Collins, and there is very little known about her except that her father, Cameron E. Tom, who is pictured here, was the mayor of Los Angeles between
I can respect the beard.
1882 and 1884. To give you a little background, in the 1880s, the small town of Los Angeles had a population of 11,000 residents, which was actually a significant increase from the previous decade. A major component of all this was the arrival of the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1876, which connected the town to the National Rail Network. And by the 1890s,
Right, so trains in this area were a new thing, new development. I mean, look at the wagon, look at the shape. Also, look at the way people are all so well dressed with a hat, jacket, maybe some vests. Everyone is well dressed.
The discovery of oil led to the development of the petroleum industry in the area. Now, Los Angeles was not known to be a typical Wild West frontier town in those days, but it still had elements of the Wild West legacy during the time.
Yeah, look at this guy. Look at this guy. Okay, so this is lovely, but I want to hear the person. So, do we see her, or is it just a voice recording? I think it's a voice recording.
Now, Aunt Jet, I want you to tell the machine all of the kinds of things that you can remember about your childhood and my father's childhood.
Tell the machine. It kind of reminds me of like my uncle when like in the 1980s and the first computers were a thing, and then you had the little speech bubble kind of idealizing the idea that the computer was loading, and then my uncle would say, "Aha, it's thinking."
From the time that you were born here in Los Angeles in 1878, and all the way the city was in those days, the village was in those days, and the kinds of things that you can recall that your father may have told you from the time he came out here on a horse in 1849, after having grown up in Virginia, where he was born in 1824. My grandchildren, who would never know any of these things without your doing this, will be interested, and so will all of their children, I'm sure. And therefore,
I'm interested.
Just tell it as you recall it. It's the only record at all that we have.
November the 26th, 1964, and I am truly grateful to my Heavenly Father for
1900, and yeah, the way she counted that is fascinating.
all the blessings I have received every day of my life ever since I was born. I've been bullied by my dear, wonderful niece Rowena to try and tell you something about my memories as a little child and about Los Angeles when it was a charming, beautiful little city, quiet, green hills, beautiful orchards of walnuts, oranges, and olives.
That actually sounds great.
Not the great, big, sprawling, dirty, noisy,
Noisy, you've seen nothing. Come to 2025.
smelly, smoggy town that it is now.
Right.
Amongst my earliest memories was going to the little stores with my mother. Main Street, from Mayo Street on to the plaza, had mostly little shops on each side of the street. On the other side of the street, as about 4th Street, there were the residences of the people who were then the leading people in Los Angeles, and I think there were not more than 1,500 white people here then, Spanish, Americans, all sorts. And my mother, I can remember, I couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, when the Main Street had a sidewalk which was wooden. It was just wooden planks laid down.
Interesting, the sidewalk was already a word.
And it was all unpaved and dusty in the summer and frightfully muddy in the winter. And the people that came in from outside
Frightfully muddy in the winter. That's another one I'm going to steal today.
places, heaven knows where, because there were no roads, came in buckboards, and they tied their horses along the hitching posts all along the front of Main Street. And I can remember walking to the market, the only little grocery shop in Los Angeles, with my mother, and I couldn't have been more than 5 years old. It was owned by a little old Dutchman with little side mutton chop whiskers, and his name was Henry Vanderleck. I can remember as if it was yesterday, on the outside of the shop was a kind of a thing where the brooms stood upside down, so you could select your own broom if you needed a broom, which I expect we did.
Needed a broom.
And inside he sold the things that we had to buy, and everything in those days came out of barrels.
And everything in those days came out of barrels. Yeah, this is great. Man, I could do this for hours.
My mother would buy cucumber pickles. They were fished out of a barrel with what they called a dipper. She'd buy so much sugar and so much flour That came out of the barrel and was
Yeah.
shoved in a paper bag.
What is it with all these barrels? A paper bag? Paper bag. Wow, a paper bag, guys.
And the cheese, he always gave me a little tiny piece of cheese to taste.
It's lovely.
Everybody could taste the cheese. And whatever he had one boy in the shop to help him, came out of these barrels and things. And he was a nice old Dutchman, and he built himself up such a good business that now the Vanderlick family, whom I think married with one of the oldest Castilian families here, are the, well, people. So anyhow, that was that. And further along, there was a little shop which was run by a man called Mesmer. That is where we bought our shoes. I wore little shoes with what they call spring heels. But my Sunday shoes were soft kid, buttoned high. On each top of each shoe was a large black silk tassel. Oh, I tell you, I was something to behold in those days.
You know, it's I also, apart from the, yeah, again, crystal clear pronunciation, like it's very nice. But another thing is, note how much the attention to details. This is a generation that clearly, and you can see that linguistically in the way they express themselves. This is a generation that marveled at the smallest things, and she was happy about it. Like, look at this little detail that I have. I have a ribbon here, and my shoes. I had Sunday shoes, and they were special. And yeah, it really is a stark contrast with, I can't have the latest iPhone, so I'm depressed. There is something, I think technology is great. I use it. My job is technology. Thanks to technology. But on the other hand, I think we lost the plot when it comes to being happy with small things. And this is, I can feel it. I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but I can feel it in the language she's using and the way she's describing things.
Well, the first fire station in Los Angeles was in Main Street between 1st and 2nd Street. And it was a tremendous excitement when there was a fire. There were very few of them because
Interesting way of using tremendous as an amplifier for, yeah.
there were very few houses and very few shops to burn down. Well, when the fire alarm sounded, the great big engine would dash out, always with magnificent white horses, and the hook and ladder, and all the inhabitants would run after it to see where the fire was. They jangled bells and whistled whistles, but no sirens, thank goodness, in those days.
Ah, thanks goodness.
And then the
No
next
sirens.
well-known thing was the brewery that was in 3rd Street between Main and Spring, and it was owned by a man, great big German, called Schwartz. And my great excitement was to walk up 3rd Street with my father, Mr. Schwartz, with leather or I suppose rubber boots up to his hips, would be sloshing down the suds and the water from the inside of the place across the sidewalk and into the gutter to go down the main drain. And he always addressed my father as Mr. Mayor.
Very precise as well, if you noticed. Like, she is not missing words. I don't know if she's reading this. Doesn't sound like it, though. It sounds like she's actually speaking. And I find it interesting how she's very precise in the vocabulary she uses. Like, this is the correct word for this, and this is what it is that is, and the gutters and the rail and the main road intersected with, like, it's very, as I say, precise.
Morning, Mr. Mayor. And once or twice I was taken into the brewery to see how everything worked, and it was so cool and lovely, and I just loved the smell.
Did she say cool? Do you think she means the temperature? Because I mean, she's again from the 1800s, but now she's recording, I guess, in the early 1900s. But I don't know if they were using the word cool in the way we use it. Do you think she literally meant temperature? Let me know in the comments.
Smell of the hops. And we used to often walk up there because later on, when we got a little bit older, we had to walk up 3rd Street to get on a cable car to take us to school. Now then, You want to know how I was dressed as a little girl?
Please.
I wore some kind of a little bodice, I can't remember what it was, which had buttons all.
Interesting. She said what, but with the addition of the aspiration, what. So what it was. I guess this was already a characteristic in some areas of American English, some states.
Around it. And on those buttons hung my drawers. And on top of that, I wore a knitted petticoat, hand knitted by my dear grandmother, who practically brought us up. A beautiful, beautiful old lady she was. Well, she wasn't old for now. She died at 70, and everybody thought that was tremendous. Well, anyhow, she used to knit.
Tremendous, but she's using it in a negative way. Whereas today, if we say that's tremendous, we mostly mean it in a positive way. A bit like the difference between terrible, negative, and terrific, positive. Both have the same stem and the same origin, but they're used in opposite ways. She's using tremendous in, and I have never heard tremendous in a negative way. Let me know if you did.
These little petticoats for me, and they were either pink and white, mostly blue and white, and those tied around my waist on top of my drawers. Then on top of that, I wore a white petticoat which hung onto some kind of a bodice, and that always was trimmed with white embroidery, which my grandmother spent hours and years embroidering for me.
I believe that.
Was on those. Then on top of that, I wore some kind of a little dress. I must have been a sight. I must have looked like a Christmas tree. And I think I must have been very uncomfortable, but I didn't know it.
Right.
That was the way we dressed in those days. Then my hair, which was very long and very thick, was tied with a ribbon on. No, when I went to school, when I was about 6 years old and went to school, that was in a nice thick plait with a ribbon on the end.
Oh, she used plait. So now in American English, braid is the word mostly used, and plait is now a word used in the UK instead. But maybe that shift hadn't happened yet, and so she still used plait.
But on Sundays, that was wild, just hanging all over the place, and that was that. And I can remember my mother on one of her trips to New York, she was very delicate, bringing back a little beaver bonnet and a little coat trimmed with beaver. Can you imagine, in Southern California? I must have died of heat, but nobody seemed to know it. Well, that's that. So, let me think, what else? Well, Pembroke and I went to a kindergarten, and we were not more, Pembroke was not more than 5 or 6, and I was a year older. And we had to go on a little one-horse car, which started at the plaza and ran down Main Street with a bell on the horse, tinkle, 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 and we knew all the drivers until we got to our little kindergarten, which was near 7th Street in Maine. We were taught by a little old maid who couldn't exist any place in the world now except between the covers of a Dickens novel.
Wow, even the mention, yeah. Anyways, this was fascinating trip, and yeah, we'll continue to make more if you guys are interested in these. Maybe we can find some recordings of old school English, like when, for instance, the Queen was young, or where the King, her father, made Christmas declarations to the empire, in fact, back. So those still exist. If you're interested, let me know. Thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow for my next daily upload. Thank you for joining Metatron's Academy. Bye.